Hi, everybody. Thank you, Linda and Paul, for the introduction. Um, very excited to be joining this session, even though it's remotely. The first topic of discussion is really why on the Hitachi side we decided to look at both venture building and venture investing to drive meaningful growth. And really, for us, Hitachi has been doing a lot of M&A in the past, and we start realizing the benefits of also incubating from within, so inside out growth, as a way for us to learn better about the markets, about the technology, the solution, the business model, and gain that knowledge and that expertise needed to make us successful, and not necessarily rely on systematically on input or knowledge from companies that we would have to integrate with. So both side of the approach became very important to us, in particularly also because we realized that we were heavily relying more on the M&A side. Um, this approach was interesting for the mothership, as we call it, so the Hitachi corporate and the Hitachi BUs, albeit new. In particular, considering that many of our BUs, as you know, Hitachi is structured across multiple sector BUs, and many of the BUs have their own innovation and new business creation teams. So the creation of an incubation arm was an interesting approach, which raised a lot of questions internally, but was also interesting in terms of being able to understand what is the right operating and execution model for creating new businesses from within, and building, I would say, these best practices, and not only sharing them across the group, but bringing also the member companies, the member BUs on board to continue to refine this approach and make it more effective. One of the reasons why the mothership also believed that this would create value for the group as a whole is because, as we all know, sector BUs have the tendency and actually a requirement to focus on their core business KPIs. And it's this concept of a left-hand, right-hand approach, and being able to do both in parallel is sometimes challenging for mature businesses, right? So the mothership saw the opportunity to create that best practice, execute on that model without impacting or limiting the impact on the core business operation and execution. Um, so the Now, if we look at the objective of incubation, of corporate incubation, and how does the corporate incubation activities have to be aligned with the overall group objectives? So this is where we really had to work on a layering of a different set of objectives between the long-term objectives. When you look at Hitachi's position in different industries, how these industries are being going under transformation, with disruption in business model as for every other company, with creation of substitute offerings, etc. So for us, it was very important to engage with the corporation on the difference between long-term growth versus short-term results. As we all know, mature businesses and large corporations are very much focused on short-term results. But if you look at what's been happening in our industries, various industries over the last 10 years, and the pace at which things change in terms of new business models, it became very apparent for Hitachi as a group that we needed to pay specific attention to some of the trends that were impacting us, and more importantly, being able to react fast enough. But reacting fast enough means being able to assess the opportunities and start incubating new businesses 1 year, 2 years, 3 years ahead, and being able to make the more of this long-term investment that will allow us to respond effectively to market disruption within let's say a 2-3 year time frame. And Hitachi saw through the different waves of IoT, AI, and all of their technology driven disruption, so that we needed to be more reactive, and adapt faster to these changes, but from a perspective of from a more corporate, longer term approach, and making the investment that would allow us to adapt to these changes. So how do we work on goals, right? So if you look at the goal setting with not only teams such as the corporate strategy teams, but also the different sector BUs, we typically work with what we call midterm plans, and the midterm plans are 3-year plans. And during a midterm plan, we define the strategy and where we want to be at the end of that midterm plan. And for each year, we define individual, I would say, gates or milestones that we need to achieve. And what you have is a cascading of long-term goals that come from the top, and a translation of these goals into actions, concrete activities, and executions related to creating new businesses and related to addressing some of the disruption. So within a 3-year time frame, we should be able to have tested a variety of business models, tested them with a number of customers, and gone through the initial phases of growth, which we call incubation, acceleration, etc. So this is effectively how we created this mapping between the corporation longer term goals, the different sector BUs goals, and kind of have a short-term view of what we need to execute on over one-year time periods. So the collaboration, it's a starting point for the collaboration, and obviously once you've defined the plan, when you go through the execution of these activities, we interlock through a series of we can call them KPIs, but you really have at the beginning of the initiative what we call operating or operations key results, which really help us understand how we're making concrete results in assessing and identifying new markets and validating with customers, as opposed to focusing primarily on revenues or immediately on revenues, which is not the right approach when you're at the beginning of this journey. And then so the collaboration is based on those operational key results, and then let's say for the first year of launching a new venture, internal venture, and then gradually going into more KPIs that look more like Series B, Series C funding, startup type of KPIs, and gradually more mature businesses type of KPIs. So it's really monitoring the progress across these different types of metrics, and on a quarterly basis through these steering committees or venture boards, reviewing with the corporate leaders. And quite often you have a BU, a business unit, or a sector business unit that has a strong interest in seeing this initiative or one initiative being successful. They sit in the board, and then they review with us the progress. And at some point, if we hit all the different milestones successfully, At some point, the sector BU will increase its level of investment or get more involved in the development of this new venture, so that at some point it can gradually start integrating that venture into their core business when you reach a specific level of maturity. It can also happen that on one side, no sector BU or BU is capable of taking that business in, but it's pretty obvious to the group that this is a business that we need to get into, and that's where you look at some other options, in particular what we call spin-out options. What metrics matters most, as I said, it's really being sure that we don't want to kill by metrics, right? We don't want to necessarily apply metrics for financial metrics or KPIs for everything. We really need to look at what phase we are in the development of the initiatives. People have the tendency to go back to traditional business metrics, right? And they try to systematically reuse these metrics, even when you start a new business. So it's really important to look at a venture from a 3-year time frame. Understand that you don't need to provide results and revenue immediately, even though you need to provide customer validation and market validation, and identify the right metrics for that particular period in time. So we all know the different types of metric that you can apply to businesses, and it's really picking the right set of metrics depending on where you are in your journey. So in terms of tools, maybe one last comment in terms of the tools that we use. So there's quite a number of tools that we need. It's very interesting when you look at corporate incubation. You really need to allow the venture teams to focus on market validation and customer validation. So there's really 2 layers here. There is a business in terms of the solution, the business model that you have to validate, and then you have all the supporting tools, right? In terms of marketing related tools, operational related tools, customer interviewing tools. There's a whole business infrastructure which you need to put in place that effectively is there to support your venture team, so they have to focus on anything else than validating with customers, defining what is the right service model or the business model, and what is the right solution, so they can focus all their time on this. So the tools are really key, and you also have sometimes teams that spend too much time looking at every single aspect of the business, which include more business infrastructure tools. So it's important to, as a general framework, to provide this, toolkit or toolbox from a marketing, from an operations, from a finance, from a lead generation standpoint, from a solution packaging, solution value proposition building. If you build a solution, you need to be careful not to start making heavy investment into building a fully blown, fully structured minimum viable solution or solution. You need to understand how you calibrate your efforts and investment between alpha, betas, etc. So all of these tools that help you run the factory in a more efficient, effective manner are very important. And again, key is to allow the venture team to very quickly validate if there's a market, there's a critical mass in the demand, and then start engaging with the customers who are willing to test this solution, this business model, concretely for their own business purposes, for their own business. Hopefully that all made sense. And very much looking forward to hearing the panel's comments and discussions remotely on this very exciting topic. Thank you.